Hi, I'm Julie Powell and welcome back to another Photoshop tutorial. A really quick one today. This is just Alice in the Garden, a continuation of my Alice in Wonderland shoot that I've been doing. So this is the final product. I'll just quickly run you through how we got here. So I just brought in a photo that I had from a gardens that I went to a while ago. I duplicated the layer and run a Gaussian blur through it, so just filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and just worked out how much of a blur I wanted to put on the image, just to make it look like it was in the distance. I then also run a light glow, which is just a gradient. It's a circular gradient that I put on this that just goes from pink through to light, and set it to hard light and 88%. If I just did that to 100%, you can just see it's just a slight gradient on that one. So I'll just set that back to where it was. Okay, so then I brought Alice in, who I had already extracted and cleaned up. There was a few bits and pieces, some hair I had to clone in and so forth. So I did that on another layer and masked her out, and then just brought her in and put her in over the top. I then did, using some actions that I've got, add a little bit of detail and some brightness to her eyes, and also smoothed over her skin a little bit. But you could easily do the eyes just with a sharpening tool and just run it at perhaps 50% over her eyes, and then doing a surface blur over her face as well. So if I was to go back here, and I'll just duplicate it. So if we were to go to filter, and I can go to an unsharp mask, and we can play around with that a little bit, and then that softens her features up a little bit. Then I can also go and do surface blur. Now you really do need to be careful when doing a surface blur, because you don't want to blur it up too much, because then it will look a bit fake. So just a little bit of a blur. Okay, so that softened it up a little bit. You can also, as I said, go through with the sharpening mask and set that at 50% and just run that over her eye a little bit. But yeah, that just pretty much gives you the same thing that I just did in my actions, but it's just a bit quicker doing it that way. So I then placed a blue eyes in. Now what I did for this was using a brush, just a standard round brush, and I made it roughly about the size of her eye, and changed the colour to a blue that I liked, and painted that in. Now it looks a bit strange, you think, on normal, but if you set that to colour, it then becomes see-through, and you can change the opacity to whatever you like. I went through with an eraser and just erased where the brush went, where it wasn't supposed to. So that's that. I then did some catch lights in her eyes. If I go in a bit closer, now the catch lights, as you can see here, it's just same again with white. I went through and add a new layer, quite a small white brush and just painted in some squiggly little lines. Went to blur, Gaussian blur, and blurred them up a bit. And just set that to soft light and dragged it down. So that just gives quite a nice little catch light in the eyes. Okay, I then added a colour lookup table. This one is Candlelight. I really like this one. I use it quite a lot actually. But I've dropped it down to 29% because it was probably just a bit too strong when it was at 100%. If you're looking for your lookup tables, they're just here in your adjustment layers. So you've got color lookup, and you go into here, and that brings you your list here. These lookup tables really just set a movie stock look to your image. You can go and buy lookup tables. There's ones for all sorts of movies. You know, Star Wars or horror or whatever. I've actually got a horror one here that I can use, and a few other bits and pieces. So they're lots of fun, but they're only available in Adobe CC subscriptions. I don't believe they're available in any other Adobe before that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that they are. I've never played with them before I got CC. So I then did a curves lookup, which again, just a simple S curve. Dropped the whites a little bit because they were a bit too bright. Played with the mid-tones and brought the blacks up a little bit so they're not so stark. So it just softens it and give it a bit more of a hazy look. Then I did a soft blur to the whole image. It was just a Gaussian blur. And I then went through with a layer mask and masked Alice out because I didn't want her blurred, just the background. Then I just did a merge to merge it all onto one layer. I did a solid colour of white, which I then changed to luminosity mode and set to about 11%. Just gives it a lovely hazy dreamy effect. I then did another colour fill, solid colour of a dark blue. I love using a dark blue. It turns all your shadows into a really dark navy as opposed to black. Again, just adding to that whole hazy dreamy feel of it. Another curves layer where I just brought the mids down just a smidge because it was getting a bit too bright. I then did a high pass. Now, to do a high pass to bring out, you do the move, so Control, Alt, Shift and E, and that will merge everything onto a new layer. So you've still got everything underneath, and you set that to linear light, which is quite drastic as you can see. Then go to filters, other, go to high pass. Then that allows you to select how much detail you want to show on the next layer. So you actually get a preview, so you don't necessarily want to go all the way up here because it's just too much, but just popping a little bit of detail in, especially around the face, is quite good. Just gives it a little bit more detail. See, it's quite blurry here, and then brings a little bit more sharpness back into the face. I then put a texture in over the top, which is just this one. It's quite, so I really like this one. I use it a lot. It's sort of like a canvas. It's all grungy and dirty, and it's got a bit of tone and everything to it. And I set that to soft light, and I dropped that down to about 20%, so you can still sort of see it, but not, sorry, I dropped it down to about 50%, and then I masked out Alice so that there's still, no, I'm pretty sure it must have been back around 25%. There we go. So it's still a little bit of texture and detail, but not on her face. And then I just added my signature, and that's it. So I hope you enjoyed that one and maybe picked up a thing or two. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.